Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Tully here at Tully Law Group. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. We're going to be talking about Medicaid eligibility and the care eligibility in particular. But just like always, we'll give it a couple of minutes for people to log on, so we'll see you then. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Wednesday webinar, our Senior Advocacy Forum, where we're here talking about Medicaid. And we're joined today by the wonderful and assertive and strong advocate, Raina DeDilectis. Thank you for joining us, Raina. It's great to see you again.
Thank you for having me, Brian. Thank you.
All right. As most of our viewers know, Raina is one of our elder care coordinators. She has been with us for a number of years, helping our clients deal with the advocacy and coordination issues that so many of our loved ones and elders face on a daily basis. Raina is a registered nurse. And she discovered her passion for caring back in 1996 when she was a home health care aide. So she started in that area and she's evolved and grown, being a registered nurse and an elder care coordinator here with us. But her diverse roles in healthcare have certainly demonstrated a commitment to patient advocacy and to improving outcomes of those people she's caring for. She's devoted to providing safe, compassionate care. Raina is a true advocate for her clients and their families, and I can vouch for that, of course. We have clients that share with us how valuable she is and how wonderful she is in the environment and helping their loved one get the best care. So thank you again, Raina, for joining us.
Thanks, Brian.
So good. We've been doing a three-part series on Medicaid eligibility. So we've done asset eligibility already. We've done income eligibility already. For those of you on the webinar today, if you didn't catch those, you can go to our website, tullyelderlaw.com, tullyelderlaw.com, and then go to our events tab, and they'll have all of our prior webinars there that you can just click on and watch. So those are there and this one combined, all three. This is how somebody can obtain eligibility for the very valuable long-term care Medicaid program. The other important thing, to give a little bit of an introduction, there are two sides to long-term care Medicaid here in New York. There is a community-based program, and then there is a chronic care-based program. The community-based is home care, the very, again, valuable, I'll keep using that word, valuable program so that families and loved ones can stay together, can stay home. And then chronic care is the nursing home program, equally important and sometimes necessary for the safety and care of our loved ones. Both of these programs have gone through some changes, home care mostly. So we're going to spend most of today, if not all of our time, talking about community-based home care and the care eligibility. This whole idea of care eligibility has become such a bigger deal, if you will, over the last 10 years, because community-based Medicaid, New York State Medicaid has been using the care issues as a higher threshold for eligibility. years ago, 10 plus years ago, it was about the assets and the income more so. And a physician would fill out a form and we'd be able to gain eligibility. But ever since 10, 12 years ago, New York State's been much more diligent on the care eligibility and really raising the bar. And I'll say making it harder for families to gain eligibility and to gain the hours they need to stay safely at home, which is why I have ladies just like Raina on staff. We have 4 elder care coordinators here on staff. Raina is the nurse. We have 2 geriatric social workers, and we have a case manager. And their job is to help our clients and their loved ones get the best care possible. And they do that every single day of the week. In addition to the care side and the changes that have happened with community Medicaid, there are also changes coming with the idea of a look back period. So historically in New York, there's been a 5-year look back for nursing home Medicaid only. Well, back in 2020, a 2.5-year look back was signed into law by Governor Cuomo at the time. But then, as we all know, the pandemic hit. And so that 2.5-year look back for community-based home care services has never started. About a year ago, the New York State Department of Health shared that they will, in fact, implement a 2.5-year look back period for home care starting April 1st of 2024. Okay, so all applications filed after April 1st of 24 will be subject to that 2.5-year look back for home care. Now, they may or may not start on actually April 1st. We've had one of the directors of Suffolk County Medicaid on this exact webinar several months ago, and he shared that there's a lot going on with the county and the state, and it may get postponed a little bit, but really only till about the summer. So it's not going to be a longer grace period. It's going to be starting soon. And what we are really encouraging our clients is those that have the care needs, get the planning, get the protection, make yourselves eligible. Let us walk you through all that and hold your hand and get the applications filed before the law changes. And the last part I'll say is you don't want to wait to the last minute. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a somewhat of a messy situation, I would imagine, as the county tries to start this auditing process for 2.5 years on all of these Medicaid applications that they receive throughout New York. So you want to be in and through the process truly before they even get to introducing this, okay? Last thing I'll say before we get started is if you have questions, we'll be happy to answer them, or more likely, Raina will be happy to answer them once we finish this part. So you've got a chat box, you've got a Q&A box, you enter questions in there and we'll get to them at the end, assuming we have time. All right, so community Medicaid, Raina, that's what we're here to talk about, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So community Medicaid has different branches, if you will. There's different types of programs. The typical one people think of is the personal care aide program. That's the PCA program where the aide comes into the house. All right, so that's one.
Absolutely.
And then there's what's called consumer directed. And for those of you that watch our webinars, we had Megan on from Community Care, I think in September, and she spoke specifically about that consumer-directed program. And would you mind sharing, Raina, please, what is the consumer-directed program from our perspective?
So the consumer-directed personal aid program, CDPAP, also sometimes known as CDPASS, personal aid system, it is where a consumer can direct their own care. So instead of getting an aid from an agency, sometimes people have family members or other people in their network. They hear from someone down the block that they have somebody that was caring for them. So you get to choose your own caregiver. So it is a really great program for people that want to employ the people that they kind of know and trust. Right. And they get a little bit more flexibility with that program as far as you can choose your own hours, make your own schedule with that. And CDPAP workers can do, I think Megan explained this as well, a little bit different than what PCAs can do from a home health aid agency, right, because they're not under the Department of Health guidelines, they don't have to be an actual home health aide or right, a trained caregiver, because right, you're basically training your own caregiver to take care of your loved ones. So you're the boss of your own little home care program there. So you don't have to have any home care background, as long as the director of the program, yourself or your loved one that you designate, feel that this person can appropriately care for you and train you to that effect. You can have those people care for you in your home.
It's a very valuable program, and as you were sharing, so where a typical aide through a home care agency is not able to drive or assist with medications or diabetes, different types of situations.
Yes.
The consumer-directed aid is directed by the client, the family, and they can do those.
Absolutely. So it works with certain things. Sometimes diets are, like if somebody's not on a regular diet and they have a swallowing issue, a regular aid from an agency may not be able to handle that. Somebody that might have a peg tube, an aid from an agency isn't trained to do that. But a family member or a caregiver could be trained to do that. So CDPAP might work for those special circumstances.
Great. And then there's another branch, if you will, another program under Community Medicaid called NHTD, Nursing Home Transitions and Diversions Program. Now, the way I look at it in sitting with clients is, and we'll get into long-term care and eligibility before we get into the assessment role, is the NHTD, and fill in the blanks here, Raina, is generally a program that is better for those that have cognitively declined instead of or in addition to the physical.
Yeah. Well, what is great about the NHTD waiver program is that it's a transition and diversion for the nursing home. So people that might normally need to go to the nursing home, we try to keep them out. Traditional home care without this NHTD program is based on ADLs and physical hands-on needs. I know you've talked about ADLs before. That's the bathing and the dressing and the grooming and eating. That's what care is assigned for. But sometimes you'll have these clients that can ambulate without a walker, can brush their teeth if they're directed, can actually get in and out of the shower, but lack the cognitive ability to know what to do once they're in there. Or if you didn't set them up for these ADLs, they couldn't do it. So the Nursing Home Transition Diversion Waiver Program will provide services based on ADLs as well as safety and supervision needs that are not always covered under traditional Medicaid services for home care.
Perfect. And then the final program to mention is there's what's called an ALP program under Community-Based Medicaid, which stands for Assisted Living Program. And that's where the Community-Based Medicaid program will actually assist in the payment of an assisted living facility. It is not, it's a very popular program, but unfortunately there's not enough beds or facilities on Long Island generally to meet the need. But it's out there, and our clients are encouraged to pursue that if it's something that fits within their goals. Anything else to add, Raina, about that?
ALP is a great program. Like you already mentioned, there are not enough beds, in my opinion, to handle that. We have a lot of clients that do utilize that, and there are some great facilities on Long Island that we would absolutely, have them assessed for. And if they meet the program, it is a great option for some of our clients.
Good. All right. So let's get a little bit more into the meat and potatoes, so to speak. I always like to share what exactly is long-term care that we're talking about, so those new viewers can hear our perspective. As Raina just mentioned, there's those activities of daily living out there. And the big picture is that we have medical needs and we can have long-term care needs. Those medical needs are going to be the ones that are in the hospital or a doctor or an ER, a rehabilitation center. And those are generally covered by our health insurance, such as Medicare or our supplemental or our secondary. But on the other side of that coin could be the long-term care needs, and that those are not covered by your health insurance. And long-term care is best defined by these activities of daily living, and it's what we do every morning. We get out of bed, that's called transferring. We then walk to the bathroom, we toilet, we bathe, we groom, we dress, and we eat. Those are the 7 physical or functional activities of daily living. Then there's the cognitive side, and those are called the instrumental activities of daily living, the IADLs. And those, for example, are going to be driving or transportation, taking a bus, preparing your medications, housekeeping, preparing food, those that require more of a processing skill, as we were talking about earlier with that NHTD program. So when we're saying long-term care, we're referring to our loved ones that need assistance with the physical ADLs or more of the cognitive processing of the IADLs. Okay. Now, the Medicaid eligibility, it's why we're here. So in talking to families, we go through asset eligibility, we go through income eligibility, which we've already covered, and then the actual care eligibility. An application or a Medicaid process, and truly when we come on board to help families, the way that we get involved is what's called life care planning. So every good reputable elder law firm out there can handle some of the things we're talking about. We are, however, the only elder law firm in New York State with not only a Medicaid department and an estate planning department, but also a care department. So we have our 4 elder care coordinators, and they're there to help really round out the picture. For us, the care is just as important as protecting the house. Making sure your loved one gets the care is just as important as getting through the Medicaid process and getting Medicaid to pay. So that's why it's such a paramount issue for us, and that's why we focus so much on these care issues. But as the legal and financial eligibility of a community Medicaid application progresses, we then get to the care portion. And I wish we didn't have to, because then it would have been a faster process and we can get the care in the house faster. But there's a number of assessments that an applicant, what Medicaid calls an AR, an applicant/recipient of Medicaid benefits, has to go through. So we always prepare our families and our clients for the reality of the time frame and the, let's call the rigor and potential difficulty of these assessments. But then again, in our firm, with our life care program, you're not doing this alone. All of these assessments must be endured. You're either doing it on your own or you're doing it with somebody like Raina that knows exactly how to navigate this, okay? So those assessments, Raina, there's going to be anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 assessments, depending on what the needs are and which way we're going.
Absolutely.
Generally speaking, all right, so let's start getting into this. There's the first round of assessments are what? So share that with me.
So in order to qualify for home care at home through Medicaid, so we have the application for the Medicaid, we get approved financially. Yay, great. We got that. So now we need to say, okay, but we have Medicaid, but we need care at home.
Yep.
So what do we need to do? We need to get that approval for care. And that's done through NYA, New York State Independent Assessor. So this was formerly known as Maximus. But last year, I want to say this changed, and it was a one-shot deal, and now it was separated into 2 parts. So it's made it a little bit more cumbersome for the clients.
More time, more
honestly,
work,
we
more
were working
stress.
through it at the same time. So we were learning together, and the people up at NYA didn't even know how it was going to go, but we've gotten here so far. So what it's been broken down into is 2 pieces. There's the first assessment, which is done by an RN, and the second part is done by what they call a clinician. So that's a nurse practitioner, PA, a physician's assistant, or an MD, medical doctor. So the first part is the big one. It can take up to 3 hours. And if it's a couple, I've been at clients' houses for even up to 6 hours, 3 hours a piece, because it really is a comprehensive picture of what's going on with the client. We talk about health history. We go over all the medications. We get into emotional aspects, cognitive things. They have memory questions. So it is a rigorous evaluation. They talk about some things that have happened in the last 3 days. Some things are in the past week, and some things are in the last 90 days. They even talk about vaccination status and go back 5 years. You know, hospitalizations, falls. It's very, very comprehensive, because with this assessment, they're actually filling out a UAS, which is a scored tool to kind of help translate into how much care somebody needs at home. We talk about all the ADLs, how they're currently getting done, how much help does the client need, what is the client's goal for care. And we're also determining, again, you mentioned, this is a long-term care program. So the client has to exhibit that these needs are going to be in place for at least 120 days. This is not a short-term thing. So if
Right.
somebody has something episodic, this would not be the program for
Right.
them.
It's not for a broken leg. It's only for a long-term care need.
Correct.
Right. Right.
So this very long 3-hour assessment that gets into very personal details can be very frustrating for families because, oh, you just asked that question and do you really need to know all that? They really do, because they're basing what your care program is going to be based on the information that you give them.
Right.
So this 3-hour assessment is usually attended by, it has to be attended by the consumer, usually a family member or their power of attorney, healthcare proxy, their designated person. And then when we're involved, one of the care coordinators like myself or one of the ladies that I work with will be there as their advocate and guide through that.
Right.
After that assessment is complete, they
Before
will
we
have
get
a second assessment.
Before we get there, so at this first UAS, and UAS stands for
Universal Assessment System.
uniform. So uniform assessment.
Uniform, sorry. Yes.
So yeah, so that is, so the UAS is what they're doing. They're focusing on, they're entering all this data into this uniform assessment system, and it's there for subsequent assessors to see. Okay.
Absolutely. Everybody that comes after the first assessment can see what the nurse has entered. And you can request to see that as well as a consumer. And you should. I tell our families that you probably want to take a look at that because we want to make sure that what's documented is accurate.
Yeah.
Because we're all human, and sometimes people might, not write something the way we thought that it was going to be, documented.
Good. Great tip there. The fact that we're all human though leads to my next point. And we'll have our senior clients in these assessments, and as the children will say to me, but mom's going to say she doesn't need care. So that's one thing we have to address. Or, a dad is going to put his game face on and do his best so that he doesn't show weakness or vulnerability. And so part of of having our care coordinators there is to respectfully share with the nurse assessor what could be considered almost the worst day that your loved one is having.
Absolutely. In preparing our clients to go through these assessments, we always talk to them about what it's going to entail, because people are very anxious and, they get nervous about what they're going to say and how they're going to be perceived. I always tell my clients that I never want to exaggerate anything, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we're properly demonstrating what your needs actually are and not downplaying them, because all your care is going to be based on this. So I would hate for a client to have an extra proud moment or feel like they don't want to appear that they need so much help, because then it's not going to maybe be there when we need it. Right. So we want to focus on what it was like last week when you were really weak and you couldn't get up from that chair, not that today was, you had that extra burst of energy and you were able to jump up on your own.
And you're offering to make coffee, right? We don't want, and there can be good days and bad days. We all acknowledge.
Absolutely. But the assessors understand that too, Brian. And, I've noticed over the last 2 years of doing this, the assessors really are trying to give the clients what they need. That's why they ask so many questions. And some of the questions are repetitive, but like slightly altered in the way that they ask, because they're trying to capture a good picture of what's going on with the client.
Okay, got it. So we get through that first assessment, and then what happens? Within a week or 2 weeks, there's a second part of this.
So it should be scheduled fairly close. I've even had ones done on the same day. When the client calls the NYS to schedule the appointments, you make both appointments at the same time. So it could, sometimes it could be a week apart, but it could be closer than that. So the second assessment is with the clinician. Like I said, that's either a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, or a medical doctor. Right. And during that assessment, they actually have access to the UAS that was previously done. So they should have reviewed that already. Right. They will ask a couple of questions. It's a much shorter assessment. Most of them are between 20 and 30 minutes. They will tell you to prepare for up to an hour. They usually do review the medications again, because it's so important to get those dosages correct. And a lot of times these clinicians will say, do you know why you're on these medications? Because they want the client to make sure that they do have an understanding of the care that they need. They'll ask about their goals of care, and really just make sure that they have a complete picture, because they're a prescriber. And that's why they added the second piece, so that they have somebody who's able to prescribe, putting their stamp of approval or denial of whether or not this person needs home care.
Okay, so speaking of that, so after this second shorter assessment by the clinician, right? So it's an NP or a PA or the MD. Then what happens, right? Do they get a ward right there? Do they get information right there? No, they've got to wait.
I wish we did. Unfortunately, at the time of the assessments, the assessors will usually say, I'm not able to tell you the outcome of this. However, within 7 to 14 days, you'll receive a letter in the mail with your determination. And that is either the approval or denial for home care services. I mean, we usually know which way it goes. If a client has demonstrated that they have a need, the assessor usually does give some kind of indication, but formally they do not tell you, yes, you're approved, no, you're denied right there. You have to wait for that letter.
And in that letter, it'll also say how many hours or no?
No.
Okay, good. So this is just about this is just establishing the need for care.
Correct.
Okay.
It's either the pass fail that you are going to either be approved for services or denied for home care services.
Okay, so
and if
now
you're denied, they'll tell you why.
Okay, good. So at this point, I shared earlier, there's community-based Medicaid is governed by what's called this MLTC, a managed long-term care. It's managed long-term care. That's what it is.
Correct.
So if there's different routes here to get into the Medicaid building, if you will. So there's the MLTC route, and there is the immediate need route. We prefer to pursue the immediate need, which unfortunately is a misnomer because there's really nothing immediate about it, but it generally goes faster. So an immediate need application will then allow us to deal directly with Nassau County, Suffolk County, or New York City, and not yet engage with the MLTC. We will eventually have to work with the MLTC, but the immediate need kind of allows us to bypass them. Now, and that's usually how we go. But ultimately, we're going to work with the MLTC no matter what. So after an MLTC-based application, there's going to be another assessment, and that's done by the actual MLTC agency, right?
Yeah. So a representative, usually a nurse from the MLTC, who now also has access. First of all, they know that you've been approved, and they can see the UAS from that first NIA nurse. Right. So the MLTC that's coming in, they'll have all that done. So it won't be as lengthy because they know you've already been approved for care. Now it's just, what is your plan of care going to be? And how many hours is this MLTC agency going to offer you to fulfill the care that you need?
Got it. Now, what if MLTC ABC says, okay, we're going to give you 6 hours a day, and we really believe there's a need here for 10 hours a day. How do we handle that?
So on these assessments, I'd like to say that there is sometimes a little bit of wiggle room. So when they get that assessment and the client is told, usually at that time, we're going to offer you 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Right. If that's a little undershooting what we had discussed as a family and me as their guiding person, I would say, is there any room for a clinical review? You can always ask. Right. And sometimes they'll say, you know what, I'll bring it to my clinical team and I'll call you back. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you get the same exact answer that you were going for. Usually the nurse that's doing that initial assessment has the ability to approve up to a certain amount of hours. If it's a high amount of hours, it may need to go to a medical review board, which might take a little longer. But that would all be explained by the assessor during that assessment. Okay.
So let's say the first MLTC ABC, we don't get beyond the 6 hours we need. We can then go look at another MLTC and do another assessment, right?
Absolutely. As long as you haven't enrolled yet, you're basically interviewing these MLTCs. You're kind of shopping around. We've got the approval. So it's like our credit card, like we can go shopping at a bunch of different stores. So I'm going to go to XYZ. what are you giving me? I'll go to ABC and see if they'll offer us any different. A lot of times it's kind of similar. Somebody's
Because
not
it's all based on the same UAS. It's
all
still
about the same.
based. It's still based on the prior.
It's based on the original UAS, so it should be around the same amount. But again, I tell my clients it's always good to have the idea of what's out there. So I will suggest sometimes to talk to 2 or 3 different people. It is your time though, so it can be rigorous, and the clients can get frustrated because now we're on the 3rd, 4th, 5th assessment, and if it doesn't really seem to be that much of a difference, shouldn't we just
There
enroll?
you go. Right.
So, we talk about all that.
Right. And you can always accept, right? You can accept that first award, and then you have a
Absolutely.
period of 90 days to move on anyway, don't you?
So yes, so with an MLTC, there is an enrollment period. So usually, but you have to enroll. So they offer you what they offer you, and then you decide whether you want to accept that offer. And as long as you enroll by the 19th or 20th of the month, conceivably your care should be authorized for the first of the following month.
Okay.
Now, if
Yeah.
you want to continue, if you're close to that date and you want to just accept that, you certainly should do that. So at least some care starts, even if it's not as many hours as maybe you wanted originally. And then within the first 90 days of an MLTC, you can still shop around.
Right.
So
I want to call.
change.
I want to call the viewer's attention though to the words conceivably and should.
Yes.
Conceivably, that's the timeline, and
Yes.
conceivably, it should happen that way. But
Correct.
there are a lot of factors here, and it doesn't always, out of our control, it doesn't always work that way within the MLTCs, within the counties, within the agencies. So
That's right.
everything we're talking about, there's always an asterisk of reality kind of jutting in there.
Well, we've had instances where we've called several MLTCs and their docket is just too busy and they're not able to schedule assessments. Remember that we don't belong to them yet, so they don't have to see us. We're basically asking them to assess us. And yes, we think that they want our business, but at the same time, if they are flooded and they don't have enough nurses to do that assessment, we may not get to see those 3 MLTCs by that date. So yeah, you have to really pay attention to your timeline and choose wisely. But like I said, if you're getting close to that date and you're concerned, then you could enroll and get services started for the first of the month, and then continue to shop around
Right.
Within that 90-day window.
Okay.
And if you get a better offer, you could change.
Got it.
Once those 90 days though expire, you're locked in for the remainder of a year.
Mhm.
So you can't then change for that 9-month period.
Got it.
And then when you're out of that locked-in period, you'll get a letter from your New York State Medicaid that your lock-in period is actually going to be ending.
Okay.
All that means is you're free to move about the cabin. So if you want to, see what else is out there, you certainly can. But you don't have to. You can
Right.
stay at MLTC if you're happy with them.
And the MLTC assessment is also determining what services they're going to offer, right? Because not everybody necessarily gets the same services.
Correct.
The attendant, the transportation. I mean,
Right. So
what else?
the big ticket items for managed long-term care companies and what most people are interested in is the home attendant.
Right.
Day programs are also covered, transportation services,
Mhm.
and some equipment. One of the bigger ones is like incontinence supplies.
Mhm.
So they would be supplying those as well as a life alert, like a life alert type personal
Right.
emergency response system.
So if we decided to go that immediate need route first
Yes.
instead of the MLTC, again, we'll come back to the MLTC in the future, but then we're not doing an MLTC assessment. Rather, there's a nurse coming in from the county, right?
Right. So if we apply with the immediate needs, basically what we're saying is we can't wait for this proposed enrollment period. We don't want that gap of services. Immediate needs conceivably should be able to get in there.
There you go again, Raina, conceivably and
sorry.
should. Okay.
It doesn't always happen, unfortunately. That's the best case scenario. We want to get that county nurse, the NYA gets finished very, very quickly. We get the nurse from the county in, they already know you were approved. They give you a plan of care. We get services. We don't have to wait till the first of the month. If they come in one day, they might be able to get it approved for the following day, and then we get services in by the next week. That's like a great case scenario. So, but yes, if you were approved through immediate needs,
Right.
You do then get a letter in the mail, usually around that 90 days. It's time to choose a managed long-term care
Right.
company. You're not going to stay with the immediate needs. It was
Mm-hmm.
immediate. We're no longer in the immediate period. We need to now transition to managed long-term care. And they'll give you the list of the MLTCs that are in your area and, tell you if you need help, that you can call the Medicaid choice number and a counselor will help you. My clients, we talk and we figure out what would work best for them. If you do not choose one on your own, you will be auto-enrolled in an MLTC. So you won't be left without somebody.
Right.
But I caution people not to do that, because if you already have care that you like through a certain home health aid agency, or if you have CDPAP and you have the workers that you like with a fiscal intermediary that you like, you want to make sure that the MLTC that you ultimately join is in network with that, with those people, because we don't want to have to jostle care around.
Right. Agreed. Okay. So with all that to me, and I deal with this every day just like you do, that was a pretty darn good, for lack of a better term, assessment of the entire care eligibility period or requirements. And again, the beauty of working with Tully Law Group and our life care planning service is that we have these professionals just like Raina that are going to assist the family through these long-term care twists and turns, so to speak. Now, overall, last question, Raina, the time frame. So we get that legal approval, the financial approval from the county. How many weeks or months even? What are we talking about with this care eligibility portion?
So as soon as we get the Medicaid approval, we can call and make an appointment. We, meaning the family. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to make these appointments for our clients, but they don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to the client and or the designated representative. So as soon as we get the approval, we let our clients know, we give them the number, and we guide them through that process. So they can call, they can make the appointments, and they're offered in person, by Zoom. So sometimes you will get a quicker Zoom appointment. I know everybody kind of wants people to come in their home, and I guess I really do prefer in person, because you get to see the person in their own environment a little bit better than by Zoom. But it really depends on the scheduling. They do offer them on the weekends, sometimes too. They do offer them in the evening. So, but you can really make that you can make those appointments, hopefully as soon as you get that approval.
But it adds at least a month, if not two.
I would say usually, I mean, probably the quickest that I've ever had anybody done is maybe 3 weeks, but it was based on the schedule. But it can sometimes drag out months based on availability, because you really want the family to be there as well, you know, and people have doctor's appointments and they have work commitments and things like that. And usually those if you call today, the appointment for tomorrow is probably booked already. I mean, sometimes they do get cancellations and you put it on a cancellation list. But I would say 3 weeks to a month and a half, 2 months. I have seen that happen. Yes.
Unfortunately, but that's just the unfortunate reality of this Medicaid program. So wonderful, Raina. Thank you. Questions. All right, folks. There's a lot that we covered, and there's a lot of ins and outs that we weren't able to cover, and it's really fact specific and family specific. So I see that there's a couple questions. Let's see what we're looking at here. So first question, Raina, how do you choose an MLTC Medicaid plan?
So again, a little bit like I mentioned earlier, it really is guided if we have care in place already. That is one of my biggest reasons for choosing an MLTC. So if you have caregivers already that you either privately hired or you're on an immediate needs, and you're working with an agency that you like, often I will go to the agency and say, we like working with you. Who are you in network with, and who do you like working with?
Good.
I have clients with multiple MLTCs, so it's not like I only choose one all the time. And a lot of them, again, they're offering the same type of services, and they all have about the same customer service type situation. So again, you're never stuck completely. So if you get onto an MLTC plan and you're not liking the customer service, or you're not liking your care coordination there, we can look to change it as soon as we can.
Okay. All right. Another question. So if the parent is living with the child, right? Well, I guess it's a two-parter. You had shared that we want the families involved, but we also want to be careful. We don't want necessarily the families interfering. We want the assessment to go as smooth as possible, and we don't want the children, right, to you answer this question for me. So if the parent lives with the child,
correct,
right, and perhaps the child's family,
mm-hmm.
During the assessments, we don't necessarily want that family involved and doing things necessarily. We want that applicant for Medicaid to be seen as an individual that is on their own during this process. Is that not right?
Well, so we want them to be as independent as possible, and we want to make sure that we're showcasing what needs are actually there.
Right.
But if the family is regularly interacting with their loved one and helping them with their ADLs, absolutely, we need to show that, because that client needs care and there isn't currently formal care in the home.
Okay.
Now, just because the family member is doing it, Medicaid does not state that the family members must do that. They are not obligated to do it. So we're highlighting that the family member has to toilet their mother. They have to prepare their meals because there is no formal caregiver in the home. That's why you're here, because we need your help.
Good.
So I absolutely do have the family members speak up and say and interject what they're doing, because a lot of times the client themselves is saying, oh, well, I do that and I do that. And then the daughter might be speaking up and saying, but mom, I did the laundry. Or mom, remember you need, oh, right. Because again, the client themselves doesn't always realize how much the family member is actually contributing to them completing those tasks. So I do agree that it's a good thing for the family members to speak up and augment what the client is saying and what help they're actually needing. Because if the family member wasn't there, then these tasks wouldn't be able to get done. And that's what we need. That's what we need to see.
Good way to look at it. Another question. So regarding consumer directed. So if a child is the healthcare proxy agent, can they be the actual aid giver? Can they be the aide?
You can be a healthcare proxy and be the actual caregiver, but you cannot be the director of the CDPAP program, like the designated rep. So if you're the healthcare proxy, you should be assigning somebody else to be the director of the schedule, because you can't hire and schedule and fire yourself. Like that doesn't make sense. So somebody has to be directing the care. But yes, a healthcare proxy can be an actual caregiver. They just can't do the scheduling of the aides, the training of the aides, and be that person for the fiscal intermediary to be that go-between.
Great. All right. Raina, thank you. This was great. All right. I appreciate having you and all that you do with our clients. Again, folks that are watching, tullyelderlaw.com for prior webinars that cover all of the other eligibility, irrevocable trusts, estate planning, the coming look back and talking about that, and keep an eye out for other invites that we have to future webinars. Happy holidays to everybody. And again, Raina, thank you. And thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.